It's that time. It's time to prune our apple trees and give them their summer prune. So good, clean, sharp secateurs required. And perhaps a bucket to catch all the waste. And there's one other thing I'm going to need. Going to need the handy camera lady to help me get into the shot so you can see what's going on. Oh, handy camera lady.
Would that be me?
That would be you. Just because people might want to get in and see things close up.
Fair enough.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Have bucket, have snippy things. Tick 2 because the cat wants to be involved today. So anyway, for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you will notice this year there are 3 trees. That lets me show you something that's a bit different between them because, as you can see, the 2 trees on the end, lots of lovely apples on them. Be a while yet before they're ripe because it'll be about October before our trees are giving us the ripe apples. This tree in the centre is new. This is its first proper year in our garden. So we're not going to get apples this year. If I do this prune right, we will get apples next year. But there are slight differences to the growth that's going to be handy to show you so you can identify things, I think. So we're going to start with pruning this tree, which is the variety Katy. Now, number 1, when to prune, because that's important. There's 2 types of pruning that you do with your apple trees. There's winter pruning, where you're getting rid of any of the damage, the disease, that kind of thing, and you're shaping the main structure of your tree. Now, we don't tend to do that so much with this type of tree because these are cordon apple trees, which means they grow in the single very, very tall stem. I say very, very tall. They actually are dwarfed. They're on super dwarfing rootstock, so they won't get to more than 3 metres tall if you allow them to get that tall. But what it means is when we prune this tree in summer, we're pruning it in quite tight to keep that shape. So we tend to not need a big prune to reshape it in winter. But the summer prune then, which is what we're doing now, the purpose of that one is very much focusing on the growth of the plant to encourage it to produce fruit buds. With this cordon tree, I'm going to do it in a way that brings it in really nice and tight. It's obviously not the same as with your big standard apple trees, but these fit brilliantly for a smaller garden or a smaller growing space like ours. Okay, so the when bit then, there's a couple of ways to think about this. Everyone will have a time period that is the standard time period for your local growing situation. For us, it's July or August for pruning our trees. Pretty much we want to get it done before the end of August. But if you're new and you don't really know what your local situation is, there's another way we can work it out. And that's when I'm going to get my handy camera lady to come in. Okay, so I said there's a way to tell if you're not sure of dates, and it is this. Looking at your tree and looking at all your branches, you can see this one here, it's got a really nice fat bud right on the end. Now, if the majority of the branches on your tree are ending in these nice fat buds, rather than leafy growth, now this one's a good example of that. Because she's new, this branch here is lots of leaves, you see, and there's no bud. So if the majority of your branches are ending in a bud, rather than this leafy growth, that's a good sign you're ready to go. Okay then, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off on this tree because it's nice new growth and it's going to be a bit easier for you to see and for me to explain. Then I'm going to do it with these older trees that are a bit more gnarly and it might be harder for you to tell. So this gives me the perfect way to do it. So let's start with this tree then. So on this branch here, we're obviously going to cut this quite far in because I mentioned this is all about keeping this nice columnar shape. But what I want you to look at is going up the branch, you can see this kind of a knobbly kind of bit here, and it's got lots of leaves that are really quite close together. Compared to, as you go further up the branch, the leaves get further apart, okay? Now this bit here, this growth, its technical name is a basal cluster. You don't need to memorise the fancy names for things, but just remember to look out for this knobbly bit where everything's kind of close together. What we're going to do is we're going to go up the branch from there, and everywhere where you see either leaves or a bud, we're going to count, okay? So from there, we're going to count 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to cut just above the 3, okay? Now, for doing this, with your secateurs, I've already mentioned, give them a clean and a sharpen. Clean, sharp secateurs makes a huge difference because it won't damage the wood so much that allows disease and nastiness in, because that's when you lose a tree. So clean, sharp, but also you'll notice most of our secateurs are bypass. These are great for doing this, but we want the sharp edge to be the one that faces the tree trunk, okay? So this is the anvil edge that's not sharp, it's blunt, and this is your sharp blade. So have the blade facing the tree, because that way the cut is on that side facing the tree, and this blunt piece does a kind of crushing motion, and that's the bit that's getting discarded, okay? So I've counted up and I've got my 3 buds from my basal cluster, which is the ugly bulby bit here. So we're going to go up from there, we're going to go 1, 2, 3. So I mentioned, turn them round so the sharp end is facing the tree, and I'm going to cut just above that number 3, okay? You can keep counting. If you ever worry, you just count again, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to count there just above, and I'm going to do a slight diagonal cut. This bit, that's the bit that goes in the bin, and you're left with your cut just above, okay? Now again, people can get all technical about all this stuff. I've done a slight angle on the cut, just slight. The reason for that is any moisture that gets on there can run off. It won't just sit on it, because you want this to heal really quickly and not let things in. Okay, that's one done. It's not as scary as you thought, is it? It's hard for me to do with it all turned round so that you can see it on camera. Okay, so that's the first one done. Now we're just looking round the tree and looking for any more branches like that that are coming out quite whippy, and we're going to prune them. So I'm looking through, given it's a new tree, there's not a lot on here. So that's quite short at the bottom, that's fine. These are all quite short, not going to bother. That one's done. Okay, we've got this here. Now let me have a wee nosy. Right. We always think when we're kids as well, we draw trees and you draw one big trunk and then all the branches come out the sides. Sometimes you might look at a tree and be like, what's the trunk and what's a branch? Because look at this. It's like a fork. Okay. Now, technically, any branch at the top can become what's called a leader. So if you cut the main leader off, it's not the end of the world. It's ideal not to. The world won't end. So what we can see here is we look for the one that's the straightest. Okay, so this one I would say is the straightest, the one going straight up. And this one I would say is the one that's kind of coming out of that. Okay, now again, it's not the end of the world, it's not super serious, but I'm going to do the same prune on this one. So I'm going to look for the end. Okay, so you can see here, this is the cluster here. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, and 3. We'll get rid of the floof. There's another one. Okay, so 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did before above this leaf here. And I'm going to make sure I turn my secateurs in towards the tree, and I'm doing a slight angle cut just above that. Okay, there we go. Look at that big massive scary bit coming off. But don't worry, this is the idea, because we don't want the tree to focus loads on all this nice green luscious growth. We're wanting this tree to focus on buds, okay? And to get buds, we're getting rid of all of the excess, and it can then focus on creating lovely fruit buds for next year. It also means I can actually see the tree, and I can see that that was pressing on a bud, so I'm just going to move it. Right, okay, looking down. It's nice and easy for that tree because it's new and there's not a lot of growth. It's going to be a bit more involved than the other 2 trees, but there's one last thing I have to do. I've got to make a decision about height. There's absolutely no sense in me having a tree with apples I can't reach to harvest. So at the minute, I'm going to say that's okay. But with these trees, I'm so going to be reducing the height in those. Okay, camera lady, which tree do you want to start on? So you don't have to move. Okay. Exactly the same. We'll have a look at the tree. Now, obviously the main difference, quite obviously, is we don't want to prune off anything that's got my apples on it. So we're going to be careful with that. But we're still going to look at the tree's branches with the apples, still have this whippy stuff coming out. So I'm still going to try and prune that and bring it in a bit. Now, this is something you get confident about and you learn to make decisions about after you've done this a couple of times. It's going to be scary the first couple of times, okay? But once you've done it, you get a bit more confident. Trust me on this one, because I have 2 videos showing me terrified doing this. This year I'm a bit okay about it now because I've done it a couple of times. It's experience. So here's a good example. I've got the main branch is going this way, but then if you can see, there's another branch coming out of it. Now, we prune this in the same way. The only difference is how short we prune it. This one, I'm going to prune to 1 set of leaves or bud. So let me see if I can see. I'm going to go to, in order to make it easier for me to get to, it's actually technically going to be 2 because there's 1, 2, or 1 if you count it as a set. Now, getting it in is the difficult part. There we go. So the reason for that then, it's different because the main stem is the one that we cut back to 3. But anything that grows out of that main stem, we don't want it to be that long because this is about keeping my columnar tree nice and narrow while we're getting it to focus on growing that fruit nice and neat into the trunk. So that's why I've cut that one to 1, because we don't want these longer branches on top of the branches that are already there. So we've taken that in much shorter. And we're just going to keep going up the tree and looking. So it's the same as when you do any prune. If you see anything that's damaged, you want to prune that off because that's an opportunity for disease and things to get into the tree. Now we've got a branch here that's been damaged because it's obviously hit the stake and it's snapped. So turning the secateurs round to face the tree, I'm going to take that right back to get rid of the damaged part. Okay. And then we go up. And oh, here we go, big whippy bit. Now, there's the main branch, and this bit is coming out. So I'm going to take that above that 1 bud. So you can see the shape is starting to come back in the bit that I've done. It's about keeping it in nice and neat to the trunk. So I'm going to finish this one off, and then I'll get onto that one because I've got a few bigger pieces here. It'll be easy for you to see. I'm only little. Okay, so I've got another new long piece of growth here. And I'm going to take that to there. Okay, we pruned the height of the tree down last year, and now you can see I've got 3 branches at the top, 2 of which potentially could be the leader. So I'm doing that thing again where I'm just going, having a look, and I can actually see, looking for that cluster of buds that I showed you earlier, so I can see where things were pruned before. I can see that this branch going this way was the one that got pruned last year because its pruning mark, the basal cluster, is actually higher up. So I can tell that that was the taller bit last year. So I'm going to take this one down. 2, 3 buds. Leaving this as the main stem. And the same with this one. And even on a ladder, I can't reach the top of that to harvest apples. So I'm going to take it down in height again. So I'm probably going to take it, given I'm on a ladder and this is me reaching from a ladder, I'll probably actually turn the secateurs round, take it to there. Now, you may be going, oh, it's really short, but no, it's not, watch. So it's not that short. I've just taken all this whippy stuff out. Because the taller it is, the more the wind's going to get it and blow it around. So there we go. Now there is 1 or 2 more branches I need to get, but Kate is not going to be able to get in to see this, I don't think, because they're at the back. And I need to be able to stretch around. So same as before. One. That was the wind. I so aimed at the bucket, that was the wind. And the back is so difficult even for me because I can't really see. 1, 2, 3. Just got to be careful. I've got one here as well. And this one here. Is that this tree? I think it might be. There we go. I'll just pick up all the stuff that didn't hit the bucket. Okay, one tree done. I'm going to get you to come and do a long shot, lovely camera lady, because this is a 1-year-old tree. She's all lovely and slim, like some weird starved supermodel. Okay, next tree. This tree is 3 years old-ish. You can see now, she's all nice and compacted in. I've taken all that whippy growth off. Nice columnar or pillar tree now. Now compare it to the one I haven't pruned yet. So you can see, if I go round here, all these branches jutting out the sides. It's just a heavier tree. The wind's catching it more. It's not as neat and tidy as that tree. And given these trees are meant for nice, compact, small spaces, that's what you want. So I guess it's time to get this one down now. And I suspect there's going to be loads more examples on here I can show you. So this is a brilliant example. We've got the main branch that is going horizontally out the stem, but then we've got this other branch that's coming vertically, or sometimes at a bit of an angle, out of the main branch. So what do we do here then? Exactly the same as before with the main branch. We're going to do 3 buds. So let me just have a good look. What can I see? So here's your main point here with your cluster. Okay, and I'm going to count up if the wind doesn't yank it out my hand. So 1, 2, what can I see? So I'm going to take this one to here, where this leaf is. Okay, so turn my secateurs around to face the tree, and that bit's gone. So that's the first bit. That's the main stem has now been pruned. What I'm now going to do is this bit here, I'm going to take that to one set of leaves or a bud, because this is coming out of the main leader. So let me see, what can I see? So if this is the main kind of cluster, I'm going to take it to above this one. And again, make sure my secateurs are facing the tree, and that's that bit out. So this is the bit that I was just pruning, and the apples have vanished. One of the things about doing this means you're actually having a good look at the tree as you go, and you'll discover things like the damaged branch on that tree. 2 of the apples had been completely burrowed into and were starting to rot. You don't want to leave any of that kind of fruit on the tree. It's not going to be something you'll be able to use. So it's gone, I'm afraid. It's sad and horrible and I hate it, but has to be done. So back to the pruning work. Okay, let me just start over here because it's a nice big one we can see. So, main branch, and this is actually coming out of this main branch. So you can see last year I pruned to there, and then this one is coming out of that branch that I'd already pruned last year. You've got such a difficult job trying to film this stuff because I can hardly see. Right, so I'm going to take this to one bud or set of leaves from that main bit there. It's going to be really difficult to see. Glad I moved that leaf because now I've just noticed there's an apple. So I'm not going to take it to lose that apple, I'm going to take it above the apple. So turn the secateurs around. Let's take it to there. Okay. There we go. So first bit of whippiness is gone, and I'm just going to keep working around. Same again, this one is coming out of the main stem. Just having a look, checking where I am. Ow, that's spiky. Okay, so bottom working up. That's done this. So I can see now that I've moved some of the leaves. This is coming out of the main stem, and there's then 2 stems coming out. So there's an apple here, so I'm going to be very careful, and I'm going to prune to above that bud. And this stem here, same again. Another brilliant example. It's always easier when there's no apples on the branch. So here's the bit where it was pruned last year. You can see there's the cut, and it's developed this new bit. So this one is when you do that whole choice and you have to make a decision. Do I go to just there, count that as 1, or do I let this be a longer branch and take it to 3 and take it to there? You can make these decisions. It's not rigid. Again, it's about shaping the tree and encouraging the tree to keep the growth into this kind of narrow pillar of a tree. And also, this pruning at this time of year is encouraging the tree to bud for next year. So, do I go 1 or do I go 3? It's completely up to me. I'm going to go 3 in this instance. I obviously did it a bit shorter last year, but... And we're now getting up to the higher up stuff. Could really feel the wind there catching that as I pulled at it. So it's quite a bit of pruning. Hopefully you can see the trees are now much neater. Air and the light can get in, all of that kind of stuff. It meant I could have a good look for damage, and in doing that I managed to find some pests that might be a problem. So now I know to keep an eye. But that is summer pruning, your cordon apple trees. Yet again. Okay, the rain's coming on. We've got laundry, so we need to go and get that in the house. See you folks.